As their hot start to the season continues, it begs a very real question. Do the Colorado Avalanche have any real weaknesses at this point in time? How much pressure is on Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes to succeed in this upcoming season, giving some mounting financial pressure on the horizon? And did the Colorado Rockies actually do something good? All things to come on today's rundown. Thank you so much for joining us. While you're here, like and subscribe to our Denver Sports 1043 The Fan YouTube channel. You can find us at Denver Sports 1043 on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. If you're watching us live on Facebook or X, we love you. We appreciate you. Like, comment, share, subscribe, interact with us however you can, and turn on those post notifications so that you never miss a moment with us. Plenty to get into today, which is why I want to welcome in friend of the show, co-host of Stokely and Evans with Mark Schlereth, Mike Evans. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Lots to talk about. I'm excited.
There really is a lot to talk about, and it feels like with so much going on here in our current Denver sports landscape, and most of it's up, and then some of it's been kind of down. It just kind of feels like the energy in the city, even though the snow is starting to come in, things are buzzing still from a sports perspective. And the leader of that charge, you could maybe argue the Broncos in that respect, but I give the nod, Mike, to the Colorado Avalanche, who just continue an unreal start to pace the first quarter of their NHL season and kind of validate and maybe even add gasoline to the fire that says, hey, this is a Stanley Cup or bust year for the Burgundy and Blue.
Boy, I used the word this morning. It's obscene. Their record right now is obscene. 19-1-6. They have lost one hockey game in regulation. That's nuts.
Yep. And
to think that they're doing it and they're still not a whole team yet. You know, they still had some key injuries. Val Nichushkin just gets back in the lineup. Sammy Girard's been out. Logan O'Connor's been out. So when you think of this team at full strength, what it's going to look like, I mean, it's nuts to think what is on tap for the rest of this season, the records that could be broken, shattered, and to set up a playoff run in which not only would they be the heavy favorite, but it would be Stanley Cup or bust.
The growing list of statistical anomalies or aberrations or things that kind of make you, as you're scrolling through your phone or on your computer, stop and go, wait a minute.
Right.
Is that real? Like the Avs outscoring in 5-on-5 situations their opponents by a count of 37-9 when Nathan MacKinnon is on the ice. They joined some rarefied air by NHL standards by matching or trailing, I should say, only the Philadelphia Flyers of 1979, 1980, when you're talking about most games to start a season with only one regulation loss. And the craziest part about that, Mike, is that the Flyers in 1979 and 1980, they went 37 games before recording their second regulation loss. So as amazing and unprecedented as this start for the Avalanche has been, if they want to own that record in a sole setting, they've got to go 11 or 12 more games at this pace.
Oh, so slackers, you haven't done anything yet.
I hope that's what
keep it going.
Does that not sound like something Nathan MacKinnon might say, though? You know what I mean? Like just the kind of leader that he is.
Does it say something about the Avs, and especially led by a guy like Nathan MacKinnon, that they win over Vancouver 3-1, and after the game is like, it's kind of a boring game.
Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of a lot of muck out there and
sloppy, a lot of stoppages,
whistles, guys
icing,
getting thrown out of and it's like that's how ridiculously high the standard is, that after a win you can sit back and go, kind of a boring hockey game.
I love that though, Mike, because that to me is a recognition of, and you've heard some self-awareness and maybe some comments like that from Broncos players this season as they've continued their miraculous 9-game win streak, where every win kind of feels like you're on pins and needles until the clock hits zero. But I think that's a positive sign for me that the leader of the team and kind of the face of the franchise in this current moment is analyzing things that way. It points to me that they understand the difficulty of the task ahead, the scrutiny that they are under, and what will come if they fall short going forward, with the recognition of a window that it's getting harder and harder to keep open. I like it.
Yeah, but let me, I get what you're saying, but I think it's, I don't take that as a self-imposed pressure. You know, I don't look at that as pressure as much as we have a standard around here. And this is what the standard is. And so when we don't feel like we play to that standard, or the game is like the one that Vancouver was, just kind of a, kind of game, it speaks to a standard that they hold themselves to, which is what I love about this team, is that the standard is ridiculous. I don't think they feel pressure right now. I mean, it's so early in the season, but what I think we're seeing through this early part of the year is a team that has such an incredibly high expectation for themselves and what they think they're capable of and what they feel they have to live up to. That, I think, is what we're seeing through these first 27 games.
You alluded to it a little bit in your first comment there, and I'll fully co-sign it. And I think the craziest part about this start of the season for the Avalanche, as we're kind of pushing past the quarter pole mark around the NHL, is that I don't think they've peaked yet.
Oh, no.
I don't think we've really seen, as good as they've been, as dominant as they've been. You're talking about a team that leads the NHL in goals for and goals against, creating this insane differential. I mentioned the disparity in scoring when Nathan McKinnon's on the ice in 5-on-5, and he seems to be barreling toward a Hart Trophy season himself, unless Cale Makar maybe threatens to push him in a sense, which would, again, outside of maybe McDavid and Draisaitl, I can't think of too many teammates pushing each other for an MVP award in recent history. But all of those things put together and combined, you still look at a situation where they've dealt with some injuries within their top six and had to shuffle some things around. Obviously, the goaltender situation has been fluid to start the season. So I guess with that notion and that
Can I add to that too? Think about this. They're 27 games in. They're on this amazing pace, and yet their all-important second line has only really started to find their groove in the last 10 or 12 games.
10 games or so.
Brock Nelson has 6 goals, 6 assists, 12 points in his last 10 games, and Gabe Landeskog's got 10 points in his last 10 games. But before that, they were racking up wins and points where it was like, and the second line still hasn't really kicked in yet. And so now that second line is going, and that just speaks to the idea that there is another gear for this team. As unbelievable as they've been, there's another gear. Ross Colton's playing so well on that second line that Val Nichushkin is going to have to wait his turn before he gets back on that
starting on the
line.
third line.
Yeah. So, to your point that they're doing all this and there's that sense that they haven't yet completely hit their stride, there's more evidence of it.
Yeah, because when now that Val Nichushkin's working his way back and he's started on the third line and kind of working that way, Gavin Brindley is going to make the road trip upcoming. So I think there's positive momentum and hope that he'll play maybe even on the tail end of that. And Brindley was somebody that you moved up into your top six because he was deserving performances on the third line that allowed him to get those opportunities due to injury. And so when you've got Brock Nelson and Gabe Landeskog kind of finding their footing in the last 10 games or so, and you expect that to continue. When Valeri Nichushkin is fully back in action, ready to go. When Gavin Brindley comes back and performs the way he was pre-injury, it's really starting to point toward a valid question that I kind of teased at the start of the show, Mike, of what is the Avalanche's real true weakness? A lot of people point to the power play success sometimes, which has kind of come and gone and been a little bit hot and cold. But Mike, do the Avs really have a bona fide Achilles heel weakness, or is it just, hey, they're pretty great across the board, there's just some things they're less great at than others?
I think the power play is a fair point, especially since the power play was a major reason why they lost to Dallas last year. I would put it this way, that as far as a regular season team is, as you hope to construct, I think they're about as perfect as you can be. Now, there is still the matter of the playoffs, but that's several months down the road, and we'll see if the guys who are playing at this level can translate it into the playoffs, and also stylistically, where the teams they play in the playoffs will play a different style with an increase in intensity come playoff time. Will this regular season team be able to look like that in the postseason? But that's a question that we don't need to really think about right now. We don't need to worry about. In the meantime, enjoy just watching kick butt hockey every night. Watch some of the best players in the world playing in their absolute peak, and start, looking at some of these records, hallowed records in hockey, and start looking at how the Avalanche are assaulting these records.
if we were to take a Sean Paytonism, right, and
You're not close.
you're not close. Yeah, maybe not, but
Nobody's close to the Fs. You're not close.
if we were to take a Sean Payton Kodak moment of the Avalanche, and yes, I know what Kodak means.
Yes.
If we were to take that Kodak moment of the Avalanche at this, 25 games in to the regular season, factoring in everything we've seen from the start up till now, what has been the most encouraging aspect of this Avalanche squad and the way they've performed thus far? And I think that's actually like a pretty broad question because of how many different answers you could give. I think the way that Scott Wedgwood performed with the start of the season and Mackenzie Blackwood nursing his way back from injury, the way that Gabe Landeskog and Brock Nelson have kind of caught on in the last 10 games or so, especially from Gabe's perspective, being his first full regular season back and looking like, 80% maybe of the player that he was pre-injury. The depth scoring that you're getting and the contributions from the Brindleys and the Olofsons, Brent Burns and the defensive pairings, Nathan McKinnon on an absolute tear, and Cale Makar looking like another Norris Trophy candidate. What of all of these different things that you can point to for a team that has one regulation loss in their first 25, 26 games has been the most encouraging sign?
I would say the goaltending. I would say the goaltending because, even when the Avs won the cup, it was with some of the worst playoff goaltending
historically ever
we'd ever seen from a Stanley Cup winner. So for them now to be in a situation where they've totally remade the goaltending situation to a point where your starter is now a backup trying to work himself back into that number one position. And Scott Wedgwood, a career journeyman backup, has played himself into a position where he's being considered for Team Canada in the Olympics. Something you never, there's no way we could have had that conversation at the beginning of the season talking about the goaltending and been able to say it with a straight face. So to be in this position where they are with not one, but two goaltenders that you can feel really good about compared to what we've seen at that position in years past, I'd say that'd be the biggest takeaway.
I would tend to agree with you because I think, listen, we've seen Nathan McKinnon have unbelievable seasons before. Now he's on pace for like 69 goals over the course of the season, which is nuts. And we've seen Cale Makar be a Norris Trophy winner and his 200-foot ability is well acknowledged. The depth scoring and I think the depth contributions for me, I think are sneaky close if I was to pick a second because, again, that's just been the Achilles heel for this team in every postseason except the one that they won. It was all those deadline acquisitions showing up in the postseason in 21-22 that helped vaunt them to that 16-4 record. Maybe Brock Nelson coming on and maybe eliminating some anxiousness or some questions in the 2C spot, which has been a revolving door as much as any. I think there's a lot of valid answers, but I would give the nod to the goaltender situation for you because I had this conversation with our guy Drew Spivak the other day when he asked me to like power rank the top 5 most important Avalanche right now, and he almost was giving me a little bit of pushback for I put Scott Wedgwood like almost in my top 3. You know what I mean? Like Nate, Cale, Wedgie. Because if Mackenzie Blackwood's season started the way that it did and Wedgwood did not perform the way that he has, I think we're having conversations about the Avalanche. They certainly don't have the start that they've had. That we're not talking about that way. And I think there might be some feeling about the Avalanche that's similar to some of the conversations we're having right now about the Nuggets in terms of some apprehension because of injury and what that could do in terms of standings and some damage in the regular season with the apprehension of wondering, is Mackenzie Blackwood going to return to full form because there's nobody behind him. Right. So I think that would definitely be where I would go as well. Shifting gears here a little bit, Mike, as it's time to hit the turn, presented by the Birdie Bar, Louisville's premier indoor golf bar. Check them out online or on Instagram at thebirdie.bar. I want to have a conversation about something that really kind of came to head yesterday about the situation up in Boulder. And obviously it comes on the heels of a very disappointing season for the Buffs. It's their first season without Shedeur Sanders and a 2-way Heisman Trophy winner in Travis Hunter. Coach Prime's first opportunity and first necessity to coach a team that's not quarterbacked by his son. And it really kind of, a lot of the momentum and the riding high coming off of the season last year felt like the meteor came back to earth a little bit up in Boulder. And then you add in the business element and kind of the landscape of college football where it is now. And there was a report that came out yesterday that showed that the Colorado Buffaloes, from a financial standpoint, are in a very precarious situation. They are projecting to report a $26 million deficit in June of 2026 when the fiscal year changes over, which would be already the largest deficit the university has ever reported. But then there's even more snowballing and compounding factors when you're factoring in Coach Prime's raise and extension coming in that could balloon that number between assistants and other football-related expenses up to $41 million of a deficit for the University of Colorado to have to saddle and manage. And I think when you have that kind of deficit, because the Buffs are not the only program by any measure in the country in terms of major Power Four programs that report deficits, and sometimes even large deficits. That's just a reality when you're talking about NIL collectives, player pools, donations, and things like that, and having to crowdsource money from the outside. It's more of a reality than it ever has been. But Colorado is not as equipped to handle those things as some of the other programs that are on that list. You know, when you're the Ohio States, the Penn States, the Alabamas and Georgias of the world, that's kind of the world you've been living in a little bit more already, and you've been putting the results on the field that help mitigate and justify some of those expenses. What was your initial reaction to that report, factoring in where Colorado is coming off of the season they just experienced?
Two things that jumped out at me. One, I know it's easy to take a look at what Deion's done and say, fire him. Will Peterson, I'm talking to you. You know, it's very easy to just say this is unacceptable and blah, 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 blah. Fact of the matter is you can't fire him, not with the amount of money that he would be owed. And you'd be now taking this shortfall, adding to it, and then having to replace a coach and a coaching staff. It's just not possible. So Deion's not going anywhere unless Deion wants to leave himself. The second big takeaway is I know CU is drawing the headlines for this because it's Deion and it's gonna be headline worthy. Fact is, this is going on with a lot of institutions. And I think what it speaks to is it's a wild new world in college sports that we're still trying to get a handle on. But here's the undisputed fact. If you want to be a big time player in football and basketball, and I'm talking about a big time player, you got to have untold amounts of money coming into your program. You have to have that booster or boosters that just are willing to year after year just scratch huge checks. And I just don't think the Buffs have that kind of support. And it's not a shot at CU fans or alumni or anything like that, because you're not alone, but it just speaks to the huge chasm that is growing between the haves and the have-nots in major college sports. And I just don't know how a lot of programs like a CU, my school that I went to, Syracuse, maybe even Michigan State for you. I just don't know how many schools are going to be able to come up with that kind of money year after year after year and be able to compete.
No, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, and I think you're right. You know, when you say like, hey, if this is who you want to be, this is what comes with it. You know, what's the adage? If you want to play in Texas, you got to have a fiddle in the band. If you want to be in the kitchen, you got to be able to take the heat. This is the pressure, the lifestyle, and the reality of programs in college football in 2025.
Did you see the story? Did you see the story about Penn State? This is a fascinating story.
With Kalani Sitake?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Penn State was sniffing around the BYU head coach. And when word got to the founder, the CEO of Crumble Cookie, who's a big BYU fan, he said, well, I some things are not replaceable. I guess I better get off the sidelines and get in the game. And so he starts scratching checks to make sure that this guy doesn't leave. And now BYU fans are sending Crumble Cookies to the Penn State offices. But it's proof that, you know, we're talking about Penn State here, right? And Penn State got outbid for a coach they wanted because BYU had that kind of huge money to be able at a moment's notice to step in and say, he's not going anywhere. Does CU have that kind of person? Does
Little Man Ice Cream is not coming forward with
Syracuse,
that kind of money.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Michigan State, I guess if I was to try to, if I was putting up a bat signal, it would be pointed at Matt Ishbia over in Phoenix and maybe Draymond Green or, give me the other multi-millionaires.
Draymond Green doesn't have that kind of money.
He's not in the B's, but he's got, over 100 M's over his career, I would imagine.
True,
so,
but
no, I agree with you. And again, when you want to point out like a secondary angle or comment about the BYU Penn State situation, Penn State fired James Franklin, who went 10-2 basically every year,
correct,
but couldn't win the big one,
right?
Because they said championships are the standard here. And then after firing James Franklin, who brought what he brought, and maybe you never really broke through the threshold, but you were always in the dance, or at least threatening on the doorstep, that same athletic department and university group, donor group, etc., let themselves get outbid for the person that they were hiring, therefore going against their standard. And the reality is that's obviously not how they wanted it to go, but clearly I would imagine there's nothing they could do. Because if they could outbid Crumble Cookies, I bet they would have. They have a donor that has more money than you. My bank account's bigger than yours.
Yeah, and take a look at LSU. Look at what LSU is willing to do and the kind of money they're paying Lane Kiffin. They're still paying off Brian Kelly. Heck, they're still paying off Ed Orgeron. It's
good to be a college football coach.
Go Tigers. But that was bad. Tigers. But if those programs exist that are willing to spend that kind of money, and that's where they're taking this arms race to, then you got to ask yourself, is this a race that we want to run? Is this a pool we want to jump into? And when you're CU and you're staring at $26 million shortfalls, the writing's on the wall that you're not.
It has looked to me, basically from the day that Coach Prime set foot in Boulder and pen was put to paper, that the Buffs were in kind of this old style Acme cartoon, Coyote and Roadrunner thing, where they are a train is coming down the tracks and they are laying the track down in front of them as they're going along.
Right.
Like they don't have the money up front to pay Coach Prime what he was promised in his contract, but we're going to make it. We're going to earn it. And then it's like, hey, we don't have the money to pay all these assistants and players and bring in all this transfer portal, blah, 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 but we're going to make it. We're going to raise it. We're going to do it. But at some point, that train is going to reach the end of those tracks. And it feels like that moment may be coming in the next season or two for the Buffs, given the financial losses and everything that they're going to have to tackle off the field in addition to on the field. So my question to you, Mike, is how much pressure is Coach Prime and the program under to win next season and start to get things moving back in the right direction?
It's one thing to say you got a $26 million shortfall coming off a 3-win season. Okay, maybe there's some cause effect there, And what would it look like? What would that financial situation look like if the Buffs are a 10-win team and they're playing in the Big 12 championship game with a chance to go to the college football playoff? Now, maybe all of a sudden you've got some people who are looking at it and saying, yes, I'll take out the checkbook. Here you go. I'll send that money. But yeah, I mean, I think regardless of how well CU does, it's still going to be a challenge moving forward. But make no mistake, it gets a lot easier if that's a 10-win team next year. So the pressure on Deion Sanders is absolutely immense. Immense.
Winning typically does cure all, and I think that is certainly going to be the case for the Buffaloes if they are going to continue to push some of these things down the road a little bit, buy themselves as a university and a donor group a little bit more time to start writing the checks that they already kind of put out there and are now coming close to having to cash. One final thing I wanted to shoehorn in here, Mike, as a big self-admitted baseball fan yourself, and somebody who, like I and many here around the metro area, acknowledge and believe that there is a sleeping giant, a dormant baseball fan base here in Colorado that has just been frosted over by such apathy and poor performance on the diamond. And there's maybe a potential, a slight thawing maybe coming with some of the organizational moves and decisions of late, going outside the organization to bring in a new face in the front office, the added responsibility and presence of a Walker Monfort, alongside and maybe in place of in some aspects Dick Monfort, and they make another hire today. Paul DePodesta hires a new general manager for the Rockies in Josh Burns. And I think that is on the surface, because again, Rockies fans are triggered, and it's like, well, didn't he work here once before? And isn't that kind of what happened to going outside and all that? But that's too simplistic of a look here, because one, he's made his way around the entirety of the NL West. He was a prominent executive in the Dodgers front office, so somebody that DePodesta is familiar with. Give me your elevator pitch, your snapshot impression of the Rockies general manager hire and why it's a very positive thing for the Rockies.
I love it. I mean, I love it. I mean, the Rockies, this is a home run hire. And the thing about the Rockies is all I've been begging them to do for the last several years is just be willing to step outside the model that you have clung to and been overly loyal to for so many years. And they started that with Paul DePodesta. I did question, how big of a move was it? And when they announced that they were bringing back Warren Schaefer as the manager, I was kind of like, yeah, all right, maybe it is more the same old. But this really catches my attention because, Josh Burns was here way back in the day in the late 90s, but you're right. He's moved around. He was an assistant GM for the Red Sox team that busted the curse in 2004. He's been a general manager in Arizona, drafted, by the way, Daniel Schlereth.
Hey, now.
He drafted Daniel Schlereth. Mark is probably angling for a consultant role as we speak.
He's got more time.
He was the GM. That's right. He has a job to replace. He was GM with the Padres. He's been with the Dodgers as a senior vice president for the last decade. And, the Dodgers have done some pretty good things during that time. I think this, and plus he's worked with Paul DePodesta before. So I think this is a tremendous hire. And it shows that it's not business as usual over there at 20th and Blake. I'm very excited. For the first time in a while, I'm very excited about the possibility of where this thing could go.
Oh, I just got like a little baby shiver there, because I'm thinking about, Mike, if we're experiencing the November and hopefully bleeding into December that we just experienced with our Colorado sports teams currently in action with the Broncos, Avs, and the Nuggets, and how well they're all simultaneously performing, something that we've never seen before. Our three major teams here in Colorado just had the best collective month of sports ever in terms of win percentage and performance in their respective leagues. And if we had all this going on, knowing that there was a competitive, contending National League team at 20th and Blake that's just waiting to get their season started, the sports calendar would never sleep. It would just be.
I know that when I say something like the Rockies are a potential powder keg, and I can see why some people would look at that and go, come on, it's the Rockies. I'm telling you, this could be a great baseball town. And if you gave this town a team that we knew consistently was going to go out and win 90 plus games and be in the running for the National League West all summer long, and be in the playoff hunt and go to the playoffs and go to a NLCS or World Series or win a World Series, I'm telling you, this would be an awesome baseball town.
I remember Rocktober. I remember the run up to it. I remember the hysteria, the excitement. I remember everyone crowding together, trying to simultaneously log on and get tickets and crashing the site and all of those things. And the series obviously turned out the way that it did. But Mike, you and I may not have twinkles in our eyes left to see it, but I have said for a number of years now, a Rockies World Series parade would rival the hype and hysteria of a Broncos Super Bowl parade. I think it would be, in terms of attendance, because we always attendance check all these parades, right? What was the Avs, the Nuggets versus the Broncos in Super Bowl 50 and all that. The show up and show out, the response from the community and the collective euphoria would, to me, be on par with something we've seen from a Broncos championship.
Because this is a baseball town. It's not a Rockies town. It's a baseball town right now, because there are so many people who have moved here from elsewhere who bring their baseball allegiance with them. That's on display whenever their team comes into Coors Field. But it would be real easy for a lot of these teams or a lot of these fans to still be a fan. Okay, like I'm a lifelong Red Sox fan. Okay, I'll always be a Red Sox fan. But you know how easy it would be to adopt and really get behind and enjoy a competitive Rockies team all summer? I bet there are fan bases and fans of other teams all around Colorado who could easily find room to get behind a really competitive, entertaining Rockies team. No question whatsoever.
And it's one of those things where, because, we always say like, oh, there's no need for the Rockies to get better because the turnstiles are spinning even when the team is bad. And that's true. They're always like top half of the league, sometimes even cracking close to the top 10 in attendance, despite having like the worst product on the field for the last half a decade in the entire, MLB. But if the Rockies were actually good, and it would be a situation where there's no walking up on game day 2 hours before first pitch and buying a rock pile ticket for $6.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That it would become a fight. It wouldn't just be Richie, the casual. Yeah.
It would be the Rockies would become the envy of Major League Baseball if they had that kind of team, because they'd have 50,000 for every game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they just would,
they build another rooftop.
Yes.
On the other side.
Rooftop Richie would have to,
that is true.
Spread his wings.
It would be there's a marketing opportunity there for sure.
But no, if you're a Rockies fan, this is great news. And it's maybe, the Paul DePodesta move was a good move. This is a great move.
Ooh, okay. I like it. We're going to have to wait a little bit to kind of see how things come together in the offseason. And it's probably, even if everything hits green lights and checks every box into this offseason, we're still looking at probably a slower burn to start with the Rockies in terms of turning this thing around because of the whole collectively that's been dug for them to try to remove themselves from. But it's an exciting time, Mike. It is an exciting time regardless to be a Colorado sports fan. There's just so much going on. The Avalanche continuing the season in the start that they are on. The Nuggets starting off in similar tones to when they were fully healthy. We're talking about them in the same vein as the Avalanche. And now they've got, a little bit of a sticky wicket, a little bit of a precarious
hang in there.
Injury
hang in there until the cavalry.
They've got to hang in there.
Hang in there. They have to hang in there until the cavalry comes back.
Because our own Jake Shapiro, who joined me yesterday, I think he brought out a good point of you were already racing for second in this Western Conference race. And now with the onset of Houston, the way that they're playing, the Lakers are starting to play well, Suns game aside. The race for second, especially if you're dealing with injuries in the early setting that kind of eliminate the standings gap for you and you're kind of in a dogfight right from the jump, that could get a little hairier than you want. And then you're looking at a situation of trying to avoid being on Oklahoma City's side of the bracket.
Yeah, that and we'll leave it at this. For me, it's just I've given up on the idea of number one seed, but it is important that you get into that second or third seed just so you stay on that opposite side of the bracket, because Oklahoma City, everything we said about the Avalanche, that's Oklahoma City in the NBA right now.
Yep, and we'll get into it more tomorrow here on this show. But the Broncos facing a sneakily very important game against the Raiders this weekend for what it can do for them from a seeding perspective in the AFC that continues to, from a playoff standpoint, just truncate itself and condense about as tight as you can possibly go. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you and Stokely and Mark in the morning. Only two of you will probably be in the building, but it'll be a good time.
Stokely made it in today.
That's true. He got a trophy.
Yeah. Hey, man, something I thought I'd never see. I saw it today. Stokely made it down Mount Crumpet, made it in.
And you may never see it again. So, we'll just close our eyes and we'll always have this morning. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. For the rest of you out there, have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. Like and subscribe to our Denver Sports YouTube channel, and we will catch you tomorrow at noon for the next rundown. I do what I love what I do. Second nature to put in the work.